Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here to wrap up all the historical Hellions historical romance book club picks for the year. So 2024 was a year that I became a co-host for the Historical Hellions Historical Romance Book Club. I have read majority of their picks anyways for the previous years that they've done the book club. I just love a historical romance book club. And so I was so excited to be a co-host for this whole calendar year as well. Reading and talking about historical romances is one of my favorite things to do. So I was so excited to join this book club. This is a historical romance book club that started in 2021. So it's amazing that it's still going and I love being a part of it. This book club was originally started by Jess from Peace Love Books and Samantha from Books with Samantha, two of my favorite book friends, and so I was so excited to join them and be a co-host for this year as well and talk about all of our historical Hellions book club picks for the year. So this is a historical romance book club where we read historical romances published before the year 2000. So it's been so much fun just exploring and kind of discovering new favorite authors from this and just kind of trying out all these authors that maybe we bought because of the covers or the step backs or have wanted to try out and just see all the things that they have brought to historical romance and romance books in general. It's just so much fun exploring and seeing all of these authors. And so in today's video, I believe Jess and Samantha are also doing a version of this video as well, where we're going to either tier rank or just kind of recap, review all of our picks from the year and see which ones we liked the most and all of those things. So I'll definitely be tagging them in the description of the video as well. I'm sure you already follow them, but if you don't, definitely go give them a follow. I love them to pieces. Also linked in the description of the video is our Historical Hellions Book Club Instagram, where you can get all of the picks for the months coming up. You can see our live show info there and then kind of our recaps as well. So all of that is linked in the description of the video. So definitely go follow us over there on Instagram. So let's just get into this. I'm gonna do it kind of quickly. As always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or full reviews on any of these books, I have reviewed them all. I review every book that I read on Goodreads, and you can always get to my Goodreads through the links in the description of this video. So I will link that below for you. I'm just gonna go in calendar order. So we have a book a month, and in January we read The Gift by Julie Garwood. So first up here is this gorgeous cover. I'm obsessed with the raised pink edges and that gorgeous moment in the middle. I feel like they don't do clinch covers like this anymore, and I wish they would. So this is The Gift by Julie Garwood. I have read a handful of Julie Garwood books, and this is actually one of my favorites, maybe my favorite from her. I gave this book 4.5 stars at the beginning of the year and loved it so much. Basically in here, the heroine was a child bride, and so it is many years later where you see her and the hero haven't seen one another in years, and now they're in the same place at the same time for reasons. Basically, the hero comes back into her life, and he decides he needs to abduct her and take her away on his ship for reasons, and at the same time, when he comes to abduct her, he sees the heroine sneaking away and trying to run away in the night, and so he decides to watch and follow her and see what happens. And so she kind of conveniently sneaks right into his arms. I love this one. I love the heroine in here. She's very naive, but in like an endearing, charming way. I just thought she was such a delight. She tries her best and her hardest to kind of just take care of people around her. Basically, she ends up on the hero's ship with him, and she very much wants to take care of all of the crew and the men on the ship, and she makes a lot of mistakes along the way and gets herself into some trouble, wreaks havoc kind of, but like in a cute, sweet way, because she's just naive and she doesn't know any better, but she's really trying her hardest. I love this one. It just has such great humor. The romance was fun. I love all the side characters. Highly recommend. This one was one of my favorites of the year. Our February book was Till Dawn Tames the Night by Megan McKinney. First of all, this gorgeous metallic cover is a stunner. So here is the beautiful cover, and then we have this gorgeous kind of almost double page step back as well. This book was such a bummer. I had really high hopes for this one because I loved Lions and Lace by this author last year. It was one of my favorites of the year. Such a good book. Highly recommend. This one I would not recommend picking up. This one is Regency. It has pirates. There's like some dubcon in here, very much old school kind of bodice ripper vibes. Basically in this one, the heroine was raised in an orphanage, and you see how she has kind of aged out. She grew up, and so now she became a teacher at the orphanage just to have a place to live. But she's always dreamed of these kind of great grand adventures, and she decides to set off on this ship to Jamaica to finally live out these adventures that she wants to have for her life. Like I said, the heroine doesn't have her family in her life anymore, and so she basically just has this dragon locket that was a gift from her father that kind of comes to play into the story. Kind of similar to the previous book, the hero in here was planning to abduct the heroine, so when he sees that she is on his ship, he decides this is the perfect opportunity for him, and so he has basically kind of set out his whole life to find this emerald, I believe is what he's looking for. So the heroine here is convinced that the heroine remembers or knows things from her past, and he's convinced with like that locket and some stories that she knows from her father that she's going to be able to help him find what he's looking for. And so it kind of goes from there. This one was just such a mess. I didn't enjoy the characters. I didn't enjoy the plot or the story. It was just such a drag, honestly, to get through. So yeah, 2 stars, not one of my favorites. So honestly, we went from bad to worse. So this one is Tempt Me With Kisses by Phoebe Kahn. This one I gave 1 star. I think this is the only book I gave 1 star to this entire year. I rarely give out 1 stars, but this one, like the 1 star was just for me for finishing the dang book. So I just pulled up my Goodreads review for this and it says, as the hero said at one point in this book, I'd like to forget everything that's happened here, so let's not mention it again. Literally a quote from the hero and my thoughts on the book as well. This one is an American set historical romance, so it takes place in California in 1851, and we see the heroine travel from the New England states and she comes all the way to California. And so the beginning of the story, I was kind of slightly intrigued because I felt like it could go interesting places. Basically, the heroine has dreamed of like these fantastical romance heroes in her life. And so when she sees the hero coming off of a ship, she is just like swooning for this man and wants him. And so I did like how she kind of sets out to kind of claim him or get him in her life. But from there, it was just a miss. And I feel like the romance was lacking. The story was so boring. I remember in here we had like, I feel like 20 plus characters that we were following their different POVs, and I just was not interested. It just quickly unraveled and I was not a fan of this one. So yeah, only 1 star for this one for me. I had a physical copy of it, but I definitely unhauled that early on into the year because this one was just like an absolute miss. All right, so our April pick was Tapestry by Karen Rainey. So here is this really pretty cover. And as you can see on here, the hero has a mask, which shows on the back as well. So this one is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which say less, I love Beauty and the Beast retellings. This one I ended up giving 3.5 stars to. So this one is a Georgian era set historical romance. And here we get that scarred and masked hero. It has Beauty and the Beast vibes. And the heroine in here is a woman who has loved him for years. So basically in here, we see the hero and the heroine, they knew one another years ago. He kind of came to her rescue at one point. And so she very much kind of like idolized him and had this like love for him without really knowing the guy. That of course is neither here nor there, but we see that the hero went off to war and he came back a very different man. So now it's years later and the heroine is determined to kind of get back into the hero's life and prove to him that she loved him, that they should be together and kind of all of these things. But he's definitely changed and kind of isn't giving her the time of day, isn't reading her letters. So she's like, you know what, I'm gonna put myself in his path and I'm gonna go work at his house, pretend to be somebody else and kind of just get into his life again. And so that is kind of what she sets out to do, and it kind of goes from there. I will say I really love the couple in here. They're really sweet and romantic together. I just wanted a little bit more time with them because some of the parts of the story they are away from one another and they have a lot of tragedy as well. So it's a very hard one to say I enjoyed because I did really enjoy aspects of it. Other parts are just very like heart-wrenching or sad for the characters, so they're definitely put through it and I just wanted them to be happy in the end. So yeah, 3.5 stars for this one. This was my first, I think, Karen Rainey book and I enjoyed it and definitely want to check out more from her. I just love a good Beauty and the Beast retelling. All right, and then in May we read His Forbidden Touch by Shelley Thacker. So this is the really pretty cover, but the step back is the gorgeous part. So let's see if it'll focus here. Stunning step back. I've had this one on my shelves for years and I was always intrigued by it. So I am glad we got to it, but sadly it didn't live up to what I thought it would be. So yeah, this one was 3 stars for me. So this one is a medieval romance and basically we are dropped kind of right into the start of the story with some battles between these 2 rival families or kingdoms. And we see this war has been going on for years, I think like 7 years. So it's been going on for 7 years. And basically in here, the heroine, her father's the king and her brother, the prince, ends up dying during the war. And so the king is just ready to make amends with the other kingdom. And so he decides to kind of make an arranged marriage situation by betrothing his daughter to the rival kingdom. And so the heroine here is actually a disgraced knight and the king decides to tell him, hey, if you want to, you know, gain access back to your family's lands, your family's estates, get your family's name back on the good side of things, so you can help me out and take my daughter over to the other kingdom safely. So this is a bodyguard romance and so they're traveling together on the road and it kind of goes from there. I will say this one started off strong for me and then it kind of just lost its luster. I felt like the middle just dragged and was so boring. I didn't care anymore. So yeah, 3 stars for this one for me. So then in June, we ended up reading Come the Morning by Shannon Drake. I actually do have a physical copy of this one around here somewhere, but I'm not going to try to pull it out. But anyways, this one I ended up giving it 2/2.5 stars to. So Shannon Drake is a pen name for Heather Graham. I was really excited for this one and looking forward to it because I had read a historical romance from Heather Graham the previous year and I really enjoyed that one. So I had high hopes that this other pen name of hers I would enjoy as well. And this book just was kind of a miss for me. I did think it was interesting how the author actually said that this book was based around her own family family history that she was researching. So I feel like that was interesting, but the book itself was just a miss for me. This is a medieval set Highlander kind of historical romance. Most of it takes place in Scotland, but in here the heroine is actually from a Viking family, and so she has a lot of like taking care of herself and wanting to pick up a sword and kind of all of those things. Again, this is another one where I feel like it started off strong and was interesting, but then it just kind of lost its luster and was such a drag to get through. I was so bored during this one, I honestly wanted to DNF it, which if it wasn't for the book club, I probably would have, but I wanted to just kind of get through it to see if it pulled it back together in the end and just be able to also share my thoughts during the live show. So yeah, definitely a miss for me. I mean, I would still read other books from her, but under her maybe Heather Graham pen name. This one was just a miss. Maybe it was just this series. I don't know, 2 stars, 2.5 stars, somewhere around there. All right, so as you saw at the beginning of the year, some of our reads weren't going so well. So for the last half of the year, we decided to kind of pick up some iconic books, some favorites, kind of all of those things to make sure that we were in a good place. And so for July, we ended up reading Where Dreams Begin by Lisa Kleypas. This is actually a reread for me. I love Lisa Kleypas books. This is one of my favorites from her. So I was so excited to reread this one. Here is the really pretty cover, and then we have this gorgeous step back moment as well, which I love. Lisa Kleypas is one of my favorite historical romance authors. This is actually one of my favorite reads from her. So this is actually standalone, so you could totally read this one on its own, which I love that because most of hers are tied up into series. Basically in this one, well, Lisa Kleypas in general, we'll just start off with saying she is the queen of self-made men heroes. So the hero in here is a self-made man, and she just does those heroes so right, which I have a whole author's guide to Lisa Kleypas books of kind of where to start, which ones to pick up, which ones connect. So definitely check that out. I'll link it in the description of the video. So basically in here, the hero is a self-made man. So he has built this entire empire of power and wealth, but he is still not invited into some of these tighter society circles. So he decides he wants to kind of marry somebody who might gain him access to this inner circle of the Ton. And so the heroine ends up kind of falling into his life, into his path around at the same time. So the heroine in here is a widowed single mom, and I just love her to pieces. She lives with her in-laws of her late husband, and so they take care of her, but also she just wants to be able to take care of herself and her daughter in the future. So she has this little like run-in with the hero because he ends up mistaking her for somebody else, and they share a kiss at the end of a party. And so they're both kind of like interested in one another. And so a few days later, he ends up inviting her to his house with a kind of business proposition. So basically he wants her to move in with him, become his kind of like secretary, or help out him and especially his sister and mother kind of get into society, kind of just teach them the ways of being a proper lady, because she is like the ultimate proper lady. And so he offers her this kind of position up. And so the heroine decides, you know what, this is the perfect time to be able to help out my daughter and myself with our finances. He is obviously wealthy, knows what he's doing with money, probably more so than my in-laws. Maybe he can help me out. So she decides to, you know what, I'll work for you if you decide to raise my pay and then also help out me in the future, like with my daughter's finances and making sure that she has this great investment to rely on when she's older. And so the hero is like, absolutely, I can do that, but also you're gonna move in with me. And so it kind of goes from there. It's just so good and so sweet. I love the hero in here, his relationship with the heroine, his relationship with her daughter was adorable. So good. I just love this one so much. Very romantic. One of my favorites from Lisa Kleypas. So definitely pick up Where Dreams Begin. If I didn't say it was 5 stars, it was 5 stars for me originally. It's 5 stars every time I reread it. All right, and then in August we read Deception by Amanda Quick. So here is this kind of coral colored cover, and then we have this gorgeous step back moment as well. Amanda Quick's step backs are iconic for all the little like vignette and little moments on there that Pino, the artist, did. All of the moments that you always see in her step backs do tie into the story as well. So I love that. So this one I actually ended up giving 3.5 stars. It was very mid for me. I have read a handful of Amanda Quick's books, and this one is just not one of my favorites, but it wasn't one of the worst either. So it was just right in the middle. So this one just kind of felt cozy and charming. Basically in here, the heroine Olympia, she's a librarian, or I should say a librarian of sorts. Like she's a librarian of her own library. She loves to read and research and just spend her time in there. She's also looking after her 3 nephews. And so the hero ends up coming into their lives one day when he shows up and says he's the new tutor for her nephews. So we find out immediately into the story that the hero is just posing as a tutor, but he's really there to find out what exactly the heroine can find out from decoding these journals or these letters that her uncle sent her. So the hero wants to be there and kind of be around her when she finds out what these journals say, because it ties into kind of his family lineage. And so so it kind of goes from there. This one I did like the side characters. I really liked the couple. I thought they were really cute. I just kind of wanted a little bit more action in this one. I'm used to Amanda Quick's like really high action, I feel like, adventure romances, because this one the whole time she is trying to decode this like journal of his family's, because for 3 generations his family has been trying to find these long lost journals that supposedly have a map to a bunch of treasure, and so he's trying to gain access to it to kind of prove to his family that he is worthy of something, because his family thinks he's just like super dull and boring, which kind of endearing about him, which I kind of love the fact that he's kind of like a little bit of a black sheep in his family, which his family is honestly the worst, so like not a bad thing for them to say that you're nothing like us. But anyways, so the whole kind of plot is around them trying to decode this journal, find this lost treasure, but then we don't get to really see that on page, and so I feel like if that was part of the story, maybe I would have enjoyed it more. But for what it was, like, it was cute, it was charming, it was cozy, so 3.5 stars, very like mid for Amanda Quick books for me. All right, and then for September was a reread for me, so we read Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase. I love this book to pieces. It's one of my favorite historical romances. This one I have always given 5 stars to, and I gave it 5 stars again. This book is iconic, enemies to lovers, historical romance. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. I feel like it's just such a classic of the genre. Basically in here, the heroine in here is the most badass heroine you will ever meet in your life, which is Jessica Trent. I love her so much. And the hero in here is Sebastian, and basically he's the worst, and he has some troubled past, we'll say. Like, he has a lot of trauma and kind of this like bad boy reputation for reasons. So she definitely comes into his life and kind of sets him on straight and narrow, and I love that about them. She is just like the perfect foil for his character, for his relationship. So I appreciate the character growth that we get from him, because he's definitely an alpha hero who is a bit of a pain and very condescending and kind of all of those alpha hero things. And so I just love them together and love seeing their romance. It very much comes full circle of everything that the hero needs in life, from his like tortured past that he's had. It comes full circle in this story, and I just love it to pieces. Iconic, enemies to lovers, historical romance, 5 stars. All right, next up I had a copy of this one, but I unhauled it as well because I did not like it. So this is Beyond the Highland Mist by Karen Marie Moning. So this one I gave 2 stars to. It was such a disappointment for me. So this author I had never read before, but I actually read 2 of her books the same month. So I read this older historical romance, and I read her newest kind of like a gothic book that she put out. Neither of them worked for me, so I just don't think she's the author for me. Basically, this one in particular was kind of like time travel, paranormally, historical romance, and it was just such a miss for me on all fronts. I was so bored. I just don't think her writing style works for me. So yeah, I unhauled it. Definitely don't want to continue on. I've heard better things about her Dark Fever series, but I'm just not thinking her and I are on the same page, so probably not for me. So 2 stars. All right, and then for November, it was another reread for me. So this is A Chance at Love by Beverly Jenkins. I love Beverly Jenkins' historical romances. I've read them all. I have a whole author guide to her books on my channel, so definitely check that out. I'll link it below. This is one of my favorites from her, and I love it to pieces. First of all, this cover is stunning. I wish they did covers like this still. I'm obsessed with the cover for this one. Basically in this one, the heroine, she is traveling to Kansas with kind of this mail order bride wagon group, and so she ends up coming there. She's not one of the mail order brides, but she's just traveling with that group of women, and so she ends up in Kansas, and it's like one of their stops. So basically these 2 little girls run up to her and they're like, hey, we want you to be our new mom. Can you come back and live with us and our Uncle Jake? And so it kind of goes from there with her delivering the girls back to their uncle, and is like, you know, see you later. And then the hero is like, hey, they kind of like you. I'm kind of like intrigued by you. Do you think you can kind of stay and have this relationship of convenience with me and help me take care of the girls for a year while I kind of try to search for a wife and a new mom for them? And so it kind of goes from there with them coming into one another's lives. Beverly Jenkins writes such strong heroines, and the heroine here is so strong and stubborn. She's actually a self-made woman, which I love. She's so wealthy, and she just takes care of her finances and takes care of herself. And I love how she teaches the girls how to take care of themselves and kind of handle their own finances. She talks back to like the businessmen in town and the banker and kind of all of those things and puts them in their place, which I love. So I love that it's just kind of strong heroine, and I just love that strong heroine. I really enjoyed this one. The hero and the heroine, their first time together does not go well, and so the heroine decides to teach the hero all the ways of what he's doing wrong, and I love them to pieces. 5 stars, always a 5-star read for me. Highly recommend Beverly Jenkins' historical romances. I love her slice of life moments and the history that she puts into her stories. Just so good. All right, and then our last book for the year was After the Abduction by Sabrina Jeffries. So we picked this one because of its kind of wintry theme on the cover, and of course the step back as well. So this was our December pick. This book is actually the third book in Sabrina Jeffrey's Swanley Spinsters series. So this is the third book in the series, and I actually read all three to get to this book because I had heard that the characters and the plot kind of overarch or connect, and so I wanted to get the full appreciation for this book in particular. So I read all three. I had heard great things about Sabrina Jeffrey's and was sadly kind of disappointed by this series. I might check out more from her in the future, but this one was a miss for me, so this one I gave 3 stars to. This one I feel like it started off strong. Basically in here, the heroine Juliet, she was abducted by somebody 2 years prior to this story. So that whole plot actually takes place in the second book in the story, and so you get her POV during that time. And so basically when she was 18, she thought she was getting taken away by this man to go and elope, but she finds out that he was actually abducting her, kidnapping her to hand her over to these smugglers that he was working with, which ended up okay for her. Like, she was found and got safe and all of those things, and so that book ended. And so now in this book, we jump to 2 years later where she has decided to go back and find the man who abducted her because her reputation is kind of in ruins currently with some rumors abounding. And so she decides to set off to go and find him and kind of set the record straight. So she's traveling with her sister and her brother-in-law, who are the couple of book 1, which I will say I hated their book, so I wasn't really a fan of how much they were involved in this story. So that might have affected my reading experience as well. But basically they set off and they end up finding the man, or they think they find the guy that abducted her all those years ago. But when they get there, he tells them, oh no, that's not me. That was my twin brother who actually like died. We're presuming he died in a shipwreck, but I'm his twin brother. I know nothing about any of that. And so right from the start, I did like how the heroine was like, yeah, I'm not buying any of this. She is super suspicious about him from the start and kind of just wants to prove that he is actually the man who abducted her and not this twin brother he's pretending to be. So I did enjoy that part. In the beginning, it started off strong, but from there, it really just lost my interest and I wasn't as invested in their story anymore of how many times he's gonna lie to her and try to pretend he's not the man that she knows he is. And it kind of just goes from there. And like I said, I wasn't a fan of her family involved in the story as well. So yeah, 3 stars, just very mid for me. All right, so that is my review of all of the books. And now if I had to rank them from, we'll go best to worst. Let's see. So first place would be Where Dreams Begin by Lisa Kleypas for me. Second place is Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase. Third place is A Chance at Love by Beverly Jenkins, which funnily enough, all 3 of these are rereads for me and they were all my favorites to begin with. So no surprise that these were all 5 stars and my favorites. Next would be The Gift by Julie Garwood. I gave this one 4.5 stars, really enjoyed it. Then Tapestry by Karen Rainey, I gave this one 3.5 stars. Deception by Amanda Quick, another 3.5 star read for me. After the Abduction by Sabrina Jeffrey's was a 3-star read for me. Another 3-star read for me, but would be below Sabrina Jeffrey's, was His Forbidden Touch by Shelley Thacker. And then we have Come the Morning by Shannon Drake, gave this one 2.5 stars. Till Dawn Tames the Night, another 2-star read for me. Beyond the Highland Mist by Karen Marie Moning, 2 stars. And then lastly was Tempt Me with Kisses by Phoebe Kahn, which was a 1-star read for me. So that's definitely at the bottom of my list, which as you can tell, the last few books I unhauled because I did not enjoy them. All right, so those were all of my thoughts on the 12 books that we read for the Historical Hellions book club for this year. Definitely let me know in the comments if you read any of them with us. If you had a ranking system for them, I would love to know. If you're gonna pick up any of these, especially like my favorites, definitely let me know that as well. I'm so excited for the historical romances that we'll be reading in 2025 for this book club. We already have the first 3 months picked out, which are on our Instagram, which again is linked in the description of the video, which I'll have a video coming out soon as well for the first 6 months books that we're going to be reading for 2025. So definitely stay tuned for that. If you'd rather leave me an emoji in the comments today to let me know that you watched this video, leave me a sword or a dagger emoji, because I feel like this book, even though I didn't like it, this just giant sword is iconic. So yeah, definitely leave me a sword or a dagger in the comments. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one and see you in 2025. Bye!